Hello everyone, this is Ashee from Crafting with Ashee and welcome to this paper crafting tutorial. This is a cute little project we're making today. We're actually going to be making this lovely little notebook folio, as you can see, and it has a decent sized notebook in there. And I'm going to be showing you how to make this totally from scratch, and we're going to be using chipboard to make this, so it's really sturdy and it folds over, and then it has this lovely little ribbon closure. Now if you're like me, it's a bit of a pain to try and tie the ribbon, but I will give it another go here quickly just to make it look, half decent. Now you can get chipboard online. Chipboard is just very heavy thick cardboard. Mine I think is 1 or 2 millimeters thick, but if you buy our ephemera packs, you will find that there's a nice lovely thick hard piece of chipboard at the back of the ephemera packs, and that is perfect to use to make these notebook folios. And it's a lovely way just to upcycle, recycle, whatever you want to call it, the chipboard, instead of just putting it in the recycling bin or throwing it away. So let me show you how to make it. So I've got a piece here of hydrangea yew cardstock. Now I'm not going to give you measurements because it can be any measurement you want depending on the size of your notebook. But your piece here of hydrangea yew that I've cut here, my piece is going to be 15 centimeters by 29. Doesn't matter as long as it's big enough to hold all of your pieces of chipboard. And now you can see here I've cut mine already. If you do cut the chipboard, what I advise you to do is not use your normal cutting blade on your trimmer. Once your cutting blade on your trimmer starts to dull a bit and is not good for cutting normal cardstock, save it, but it'll be perfect for cutting chipboard. And just always use that cutter, that blade for cutting your chipboard, and then you won't dull your normal blade. Now I've got here some bookbinding tools, but you don't have to use this. As long as your first piece of cardstock, your first piece of chipboard, is about 1 inch away from the bottom and the sides of your cardstock, it's good. Now I'm just going to use Tombow to stick this down, but you could use equally tear and tape. You need a really strong adhesive, so I wouldn't think normal seal is going to work. Seal Plus might work, but definitely not glue sticks or anything like that. You need a really strong adhesive. Now this is basically just like a T-shaped ruler, even though it's an L, and it's just giving me that corner. I'm going to put that down like that, give it a good press down, and then you need to leave a little gap between that and the next piece of chipboard. Now this tool helps you to do that, and it's about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, well, I don't know what that is in inches, maybe 1/8 of an inch, I would say, wide. In my day, when I first started to make this, I didn't have these fancy tools, and what I did was stuck 2 pieces of chipboard together, and that gave me roughly the same width of my you can see me showing you. If you use 2 pieces of chipboard together, that just gave you enough width, enough space between the two to work perfectly. So I'm going to use that because I've got it, and then I'm going to use it to space my next piece. Now my next piece of chipboard is a side piece, so it's tiny. The first piece, I should have said there, measured 5 centimeters by 10.8 centimeters. And this piece measures 10.8 by 1 centimeter. Okay. There we go. I'm just making sure everything's, the real test here is to make sure everything is level and everything is the same, as straight as possible, because otherwise it's going to look wonky at the end. So there we go. So now we're going to use it again, and now we're going to put down our back piece. So this is our largest piece, so this is 10.8 centimeters by 7.5. Now all of these pieces, all of these measurements and all the supplies I used will be on the blog post, and you can find the link to that in the description box below. You can also find all my supplies linked below as well, and you can shop everything straight in my online shop. Right, so as you can see, I'm putting a good amount of Tombow down because you want this to really stick well, and then just taking my time to make sure everything is really nicely lined up. So stick that down like that, and then move across. Now we're going to do a side piece again, same as before. This is the same measurement as before, and basically we're going to go exactly the same as the other side. There we go. And you could just use normal cardstock and make this, but using the chipboard and wrapping the chipboard makes a really sturdy folio, and it just gives it that something and makes it really elevates the whole project. Right, and if you do want to use bookbinding tools like this, you can find something like this online. If you just look up bookbinding tools, you will find something like that easily online. Right, there are all of our pieces down on our cardstock. Now we just need to chop off a little bit here on the right hand side. So all I'm going to do is move my grid paper. I'm going to put this here. I'm just trying to see which way is the right way down. There we go. And then I just need to use my craft knife to cut along here. Now I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool. Now your Take Your Pick tool has many different accessories, and one of them is a craft knife. So here I'm just going to screw that in on the one end, and then don't press too hard. It's much better to just press gently and do it multiple times, and you get a much better cut that way. So there we go. Easy, simple, lovely. Right, now we're ready to start wrapping our chipboard. So I'm going to get my excuse me, I'm going to get my bone folder out so that I can really wrap this chipboard nicely. Now you can make this with whatever. Oh, sorry, before I do that, I need to cut off, should have remembered, I need to cut off the corners. You need to miter the corners, and this just takes the bulk out of the corners. This means that you won't, it'll be much easier later on next to wrap your chipboard. You won't have a lot of bulk in the corners that will make it look ugly and make it difficult to wrap. So as long as you can do this without this tool again, just make sure you cut across so that you're leaving just a couple of millimeters of cardstock from the corner. When I first started, we used to just eyeball this and just cut in a diagonal across the corner, just leaving a tiny amount of cardstock away from the corner of the point of the corner. Right, let's get rid of all those bits and clear the decks so that we can now start to actually wrap our chipboard. Right, bring in our craft sheet, and let's see what I'm going to get next. I'm going to use tear and tape and my bone folder to wrap my chipboard. So I'm just going around all the edges here, just scoring so that it'll make it easier for us later on to wrap this chipboard. Right. Okay, and then I'm going to get my tear and tape out. I find it's easier to use tear and tape, but you could use again just some Tombow or maybe the Seal Plus. I really is personal preference, and I'm going to put a piece at the top and the bottom, as you can see here, and then also on either side, just at the very edges of the cardstock so that it will catch properly. Lovely. Going to give that a burnish with my bone folder, because all tape, any glue is pressure adhesive, pressure related, which means if you give it a good burnish, a good press down, it's going to stick better. So now here I'm going to do the top and the bottom, the long sides first. So I'm just pulling that over, making sure I've got a nice crisp fold, and then I'm going to remove my tear and tape and just stick that down. There we go. Then we're going to flip that round to the other side. We're going to take off that piece there and again give it a nice press down. So now it's time to do the side bits. When you do this, you'll find that there's little bits sticking out here, and you just want to use your nail or your bone folder just to tuck those in, and then we are going to you can see him using the bone folder, and then we're going to just remove the tear and tape, and I'm just checking that everything's okay, being a bit fussy today. Remove that tear and tape and give it a good stick down like that. Right, other side, same thing. And here I decide that I actually wanted to be a bit closer to the chipboard than the bookbinding tool made it, so I'm just giving it a little trim there, and then I'm happy with the way it looks. Remove that piece of tear and tape and stick it down. Right, so that is the outside of our chipboard wrapped. So now we need to bring in our bone folder, and first I'm going to go around the edges of here just to get that really nice crisp fold and give it a really lovely edge, nice crisp edge, including catching all the corners, everything. And look at that, it's lovely. You see how sturdy that is now? Really sturdy. Now I'm going to go in here where we've got the natural folds of our, where we don't have our chipboard, and I'm going to use my bone folder here just to score it. Don't go too heavy, just go multiple times with a lighter hand. As I said before, is much better than going once with a heavy hand. You're more likely to go through your chipboard, or not your chipboard, your cardstock doing that. Right, so now we've got everything folded, and there you can see how it's going to come together. Isn't that cool? Right, you can see me here just making sure my fold lines are perfect. I'm being a bit pedantic here. Now we need to put a piece of cardstock or piece of designer series paper to cover this piece of the chipboard. And at this point I think I realised that I don't have a piece of hydrangea U cardstock with me, so I decided to just use a piece here of the beautiful designer series paper that we're going to use on the outside of this booklet. And this is the Petite Blossoms designer series paper, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's on the one side it has these beautiful florals with gold foiling, on the other side it has lovely patterns as well. So you can really use the A or the B side, but I tend to use the A side with this because the gold foiling and the florals are just absolutely gorgeous. So I just measured there with my pencil. It tends to be the way I measure quite often, is just by eyeballing it. And now I'm just going to cut there. There we go. And that's going to be our piece that will go on the inside of our booklet, inside of our notebook, just like that. Isn't that lovely? Right, so we can stick that down, and I'm just going to use my Tombow again to stick that down. Well, no, I'm not. I'm going to use my tear and tape. Correct myself. You can use whatever takes your fancy. I must really have the tear and tape to hand, so I just went with that. It's been a while since I videoed this, and now I'm doing the voiceover, so I can't really remember what my thought process was at the time. But I do love this notebook, and if you're enjoying this video, I'd be grateful if you could give it a big thumbs up, and also hit that subscribe button, because it makes a huge difference to how visible my videos are on YouTube, and I really do appreciate it. Okay, so there's all our tear and tape down, so now we can remove the backings and stick this to our wrapped chipboard. There we go. get rid of that. And then on the other side I've decided I am going to use some Tombow. Tombow's fighting me. This is also why I went for the tear and tape. I always seem to be getting to the end of my Tombow. I just use so much of it that I just go through it so quickly because I make so many different projects. I've gone for my other glue that I have here on my desk to try and compensate. There we go. Instead of having to go downstairs to find more glue, because as you know, if you've been watching my videos, I don't film in my craft room. My craft room is too small, so I'm filming in a spare room, so I have to bring up everything to film and then take it all the way back downstairs again. Such is life. But there we go. So let's stick that down to our chipboard, and then I'm just getting rid of any glue that seems to have splodged out. Lovely. Giving that a good push down. And this is a point I realise I've got glue on my craft mat, unfortunately, on my grid paper. Right, so this is the outside of our notebook finished. Now I'm just going to reinforce those score lines again with my bone folder. Again, be gentle because it's paper and you don't want your bone folder to go through the paper. So as I said before, just do multiple times but gently. So this process of wrapping the chipboard and is very much the same as we would do to make a mini album. Now a mini album for me is I usually make quite big mini albums with maybe 5 or 6 pages with lots of flaps and pockets and flips and stuff. If you would like to see me how I make a mini album, if you'd like that kind of tutorial, let me know in the comments below and I will make a video showing you how to make your own mini album. I think they're lovely because you can make a mini album for a specific event. So say you're going away for the weekend, or you have a university graduation, or whatever it might be. You can make a lovely mini album just to record that event with all the photos and the journaling, so that you don't forget all those stories that go on behind the photos. I think that's the beauty of scrapbooking or recording your photos, printing them out, is that you don't forget all the stories related to those photos, the time and the people as well. So here I've got my notebook, and I just got this notebook online. I got a bulk order of them, and I've just put some tear and tape. You need really strong adhesive here, so I'm using tear and tape, and I'm just taking the backings off, and this one's fighting me. There we go. And I'm just putting a bit of glue where I see gaps. And then I'm just going to stick this down in the center portion here. So as you can see here, I'm just making sure it's centered top to bottom and left to right. And you want to make sure it doesn't fall over any of your score lines. So it's actually in between the score line. There you go. Perfect. Isn't that cool? So cool. Right, so time to cover the outside and the front of our notebook with some pattern paper. I haven't given measurements because depending on how you wrap your chipboard and how tightly or how loosely you wrap it, the measurements will change. So I'm going to just measure as I go along, and then I am going to cut my pieces of paper just like that. And if by magic I've cut them all, and here they are, so let's start to stick these down. Now I've got a piece here of the same paper, and I'm going to stick it on top of my notebook, and I've used exactly the same pattern all the way through this, so it leads to a lovely continuity, which I think also makes it look Really nice. Now here I'm just using some tear and tape at the top here, because I want tear and tape where you see that glossy binding on the notebook, because normal wet glue is not going to stick to that so well. And then for the rest of it I'm just going to use some normal Tombow to get everything nicely stuck down. So just give that a good press down, and now we're ready to stick all our other pieces down. So this is the main piece here for the back, and for these pieces I'm just going to use Tombow to stick everything down. So just give it a little good press with my Tombow, get plenty of it on there, but it's going to be folded and messed about with, so you don't want it to just come up at any point. So there we go. So that's that piece down. And then we're just going to stick down the rest of the pieces now. See if by magic all the rest of the pieces are stuck down. There we go. Now at this point I realise that I've forgotten to do my ribbon closure. So I'm going to have to rip up a few pieces to do this, but you'll see how I get round this. The ribbon closure is going to be using the Hydrangea U Designer and Hydrangea U ribbon, and I was meant to this is when I realised what I've made the boo-boo. So I decided that I'm just going to wrap it around anyway and just tie it up as a bow. So you can see him here fiddling about. I'm not the best with bows or any of that kind of thing, so just going to attempt to tie a bow. Now if you wanted to use it normally, you would have put a piece of ribbon underneath one piece and then another piece under another piece. You can see here how I decided to do that. So I've got a piece of ribbon underneath the chipboard to the left, and then I've got another piece there underneath the chipboard to the right, and there you go. There are our lovely chipboard folios using the beautiful Boutique Blossoms Designer Series paper, and I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial showing you how to cover and wrap your chipboard to make your own notebook folios. So thank you again, and until next time, enjoy being creative. Bye.